Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2 and 5 to 7. The people who walk in darkness shall see a great light, a light that will shine on all those who live in the land of the shadow of death. In that glorious day of peace, there will no longer be the issuing of battle gear, no more the blood-stained uniforms of war. All such will be burned. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. These will be his mighty royal title. Wonderful Counselor, the mighty God, the everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. His ever-expanding peaceful government will never end.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. How we doing? That good, huh? I got to tell you, being over here in this room with that coffee cake in the same room, I did not sing a lot during that. I think I had 3 pieces in about 5 minutes. Maybe we should start keeping that in the sanctuary. Hey, does anybody know how what the speed of light is? How fast the speed of light is? Anybody? Say it out if you know. That's right. 186,000 miles per second. That's pretty fast, right? The speed of light is also 870,000 times faster than the speed of sound, which only travels at a sluggish 4.6 miles per second. The speed of light and the speed of sound it's best seen when we look at lightning. You see lightning flash in the sky, and then we hear the sound of it, what we call thunder, a few seconds later. It shows us just how fast it is. When you look up at the moon at night, you're actually seeing light that bounced off of its surface a little more than a second ago. And if our star, the sun, were to suddenly burn out, we wouldn't even know it for about 8 minutes, because it would take that long for the last bit of light leaving the sun to reach us. Here's the thing, though. The sun is 93 million miles away from the earth. And finally, when we look up at the stars at night, we're seeing light that might have taken 20 or 50 or even a few hundred years to reach our eyes. What's my point this morning? Even though light is really fast, we still have to wait for it. The coming of Jesus into the world, what the passage that we just heard is all about, is also about a light that we have to wait for. We don't really know where the light, capital L, originated, but it traveled across time and space to reach us. And the season of Advent, the season that we're in right now on the liturgical calendar, is all about that. It's all about waiting on this light. Advent is the approach of the light, and Epiphany, or what we call Christmas here in the West, is the point at which the light reaches us. And if we are intellectually honest beings with all that we know about the speed of light and science, and if the spiritual life truly is compared to light that we have to wait to reach us, this means something for us as people of faith that flies in the face of a culture where we strive for things to arrive more and more quickly so that we can consume them and discard them and then move on to something else. We do this with food. We do this with learning. We do this with relationships. We do this with clothing. We are often beings who prefer to devour things rather than savoring them. When we're in a conversation, we're often thinking about what we're going to say next instead of listening. We're often dissatisfied and nervous and anxious because we don't like waiting for things. We live this way because we fail to understand that even though light is really fast, it's not instant. And this creates restlessness and dissatisfaction in us. And my question this morning is, could this information that we see at work in the cosmos be the cosmos, maybe even God, trying to get across to us one very simple but one very profound thing. That life and faith are more about waiting than they are about getting what we want as quickly as possible. And that's where darkness is. It's in the waiting for the thing that we want to happen more than anything else. Maybe even waiting for the arrival of a God to come and rescue us. You know, when I think back over my own life and all that I've seen and heard and experienced, I realize often with deep regret how much more happy I'd have been had I just slowed down and let things take their course. Every time I rushed to make a decision in my life, I always regretted it. Kierkegaard said that life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. And that is the paradox of living. But what if we could bring those two opposites together? What if we could live our lives without regrets? Could being okay with waiting for things, could embracing waiting as the norm in human life and not the exception be the better way to live? What if we got out of bed in the morning not being driven to compulsively chase what we're waiting for, but to acknowledge the waiting itself as an integral part of living a life of depth and meaning and purpose? If you ever want to read a book that will change your life, it's short, I promise, but there is a book called The Tao Te Ching. Has anyone ever heard of it? It's actually spelled with a T, not a D, but it's pronounced with a D. The Tao is a short body of writings written by a man named Lao Tzu, who was a contemporary of Confucius. And after he died, a religion sprang up in his name amongst those who were following his teachings, his writings. And in the Tao, Lao Tzu writes something that really speaks to the importance of getting comfortable in waiting. He writes this: life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. If you are depressed, you are living in the past. If you are anxious, you are living in the future. But if you are at peace, you are living in the present. Be careful what you water your dreams with. Water them with worry and fear, and you will produce weeds that choke the life from your dreams. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. So act without any expectation. Those words have helped me many times in my life to slow down and get comfortable in waiting for things. They've helped me to embrace this reality that life and faith truly are more about waiting than they are about getting what I want as quickly as possible. I have no way to transition to my next story, but I want to tell you a story about how I learned to hold chickens. One of the most vivid memories from my childhood was from when I was 9 years old. My family was living in Flint, Michigan at the time, and there was a terrible heat wave that hit the city this particular summer. And it was in the upper 90s, which is unheard of in Michigan. And my family never had air conditioning. We didn't need it. And so during this heat wave, my mom would take me to the mall during the day where there was air conditioning so we could get some relief during the hottest part of the day. And I lived in this town where there were tons of families. If you know anything about Flint, you know that the entire economy is fueled by the auto industry. And so it was during this big auto boom, and many of the families in the town would also spend time at the mall. And the mall had a ton of things for kids to do. They always made sure that there were things for families and children. And this particular week, they had a petting zoo there, right out in the middle of the mall. It had sheep and goats and rabbits and hamsters and baby chickens. And you were only allowed to pet all of the other animals, but the chickens were in this sort of open pen with these lights over top of it to keep them warm. And you were actually allowed to reach in and pick up and hold these chickens. And I wanted to hold one of these chickens so bad. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to hold a baby chicken, but it's very difficult. They writhe and they squirm and they claw at you with their legs. And I was so interested in these chickens, so my mom went to do some shopping, and I got in this long line to wait for my turn to hold the chicken. And I got to the front, and I leaned over the pen to grab one, and I picked it up, and it started going crazy. And I was a kid. I was 9 years old. I didn't know what to do, and it was trying to get out of my hands. So I just squeezed harder and harder so it couldn't escape. And I was terrified, and the more it squirmed, the tighter I squeezed. Don't worry, this isn't going to end like you think that's all. And the tighter I squeezed, the more violent it became. And eventually, I heard a voice behind me saying, "Ryan, stop it! You're going to kill that chicken!" And I saw my mom rushing across the mall, and she got to me, and she dropped her shopping bags, and she pried my little hands apart, and she said, "Here, you have to hold them like this." And she kind of cupped her hands around the chicken. Now, my mom was raised on a farm, so she knew this stuff. She also taught me once how to behead a chicken to make fried chicken, which was a bit traumatic to hear from my mother. But she put the chicken back in my hands and showed me how to hold it. And finally, the chicken relaxed. You could see this look in his beady little eyes like, "Thank God you almost killed me, man." That is how I learned to hold baby chickens. What's my point? Waiting for God is like holding a baby chicken. We get nervous, we get scared, we enter territory in our lives that we've never entered before. And the tendency is to cling tightly, to squeeze harder, because we are afraid of losing the things that truly make us happy. We start to lose our grip sometimes, and the temptation is to fall into old patterns of force and pressure that have never worked for us ever, but they are familiar. So we just default into them. And the light of God that is ever streaming toward us is always wanting us to loosen our grip, to trust, and to stop, and to breathe. When we try to take everything into our hands and try to do what only a God can, chaos and violence and division become the dominant forces that inform our decision-making as people. Advent is waiting. Life is waiting. Do you believe that about God? Is that the Jesus you're waiting for, or are you waiting for something else? Do you believe in a Jesus that governs with peace, or one who overcomes the world by instilling fear and using force? The Jesus that we see in Scripture is gentle and kind. He doesn't push and he doesn't threaten. He invites us into reality and into an unfolding way of life. The people who walk in darkness shall see the great light, a light that will shine on all of those who live in the land of the shadow of death. In that glorious day of peace, there will no longer be the issuing of battle gear, no more blood-stained uniforms of war. All such will be burned. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder. These will be his royal titles: Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. His ever-expanding, or we could even say ever-arriving, peaceful government will never end. Light is really fast, but we have to wait for it. And I pray that we become aware of the grace of waiting. A people who rush nothing, a people who are never early, a people who are never late, but a people who are always right on time, just as God is. Would you stand with me and we'll pray?